Some important people that led the movement were Charles Grandison Finney, also known as the father of modern revivalism, Lemuel Haynes, and Richard Allen, the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in the East.
Due to the effects of the American Revolution and the Enlightenment, which instilled an increasing need for individual reason and a disdain for authority and the upper class, the Second Great Awakening emphasized the individual and the responsibility to seek salvation. These people were fighting for the rejection of past Calvinistic beliefs of the 18th century because they did not agree that God predetermined a person's salvation to heaven or damnation to hell. Rather, the newly established network of religious communication valued the power of the common citizen and their ability to create their own decisions on religious matter. With this new created public forum with people as the ultimate judge, it created some shortcomings for people who disliked the revivals and valued the more personal and secluded type of prayer. This layer created more division between Americans, as the large number of people in the revivals allowed the masses to potentially being misled to follow the popular religious ideas over the truth.
Great Awakening. One of those would be the temperance movement, which hoped to reduce and or eliminate people's consumption of alcohol. And this reinforces the idea of heaven on earth. How can you have a stable family home, and how can you have a godly society if everybody's drunk all the time? So the most important reform on top of the temperance movement associated with the Second Great Awakening was the abolitionist movement. Leaders such as Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote the Uncle Tom's Cabin, and other leaders led the Second Great Awakening to its peak. So many people came to believe that everyone's life was equally valuable. They became more and more involved in the idea that slavery should not exist, and that people who were enslaved had souls, and that they were just as worthy of salvation as anyone else who was free. God's word and the preservation of the family and the preservation of individual rights became not only solely important to individuals, but united the American democracy and republicanism ideals within the country. So slavery should not exist. People thought that this idea was more relevant. People didn't think of it as such of a radical idea. And people who were really motivated by their faith in God and their faith in trying to create heaven on earth and a better society campaigned really strenuously for the end of slavery, and ultimately were successful. The Second Great Awakening enforced this wave of religious revival and was connected in all sorts of interesting ways to the economic and political changes of the time period, and in its way led to all sorts of different social changes that include politics, religion, culture, economics, but they were all bound together in a larger culture within which everyday individuals navigated their lives. And it's also good to show that sometimes people are driven to make social changes, maybe due to dutiful workforce and the campaign for an industrial society, or maybe that the democratic and political shift in pertaining to who had power, who had money, and who got to vote prompted these changes. But ultimately, the Second Great Awakening and the ideas of trying to improve America and to improve the world and to create heaven on earth led to all sorts of interesting things that are still with us today, including religious movements and the end of slavery.